Welcome to today's episode of CLCI Live, brought to you by the award-winning and ICF accredited school, Certified Life Coach Institute. Sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode.
Today, we will be discussing confirmation biases. I think we're going to kind of open up the floor first, explaining what confirmation bias means to us. And then it might be a good idea to probably explain how confirmation biases can come up during your coaching sessions. And maybe we can figure out some ways to potentially work past those. I want to, again, open up the floor as far as what you guys consider confirmation bias to be. What would you explain a confirmation bias to be?
I'd just like for you to agree with me right now when I explain this, please. Would you? I'm even looking for people to agree with me. That's my best explanation of confirmation bias.
Explanation of what a confirmation bias is. It's looking for someone to agree with them. Do you have anything more than that, Anthony?
I would say I have a belief about something in particular, and I will seek out and remember and accept information that confirms my beliefs. And anything that goes against it, I'm probably going to ignore.
I'm just going to ignore or
not even bother remembering or not bother even seeking out in the first place because I already have my set belief.
Because there can only be one way. And we see a lot of confirmation bias where do we see a lot of confirmation bias?
Politics,
yes.
Religion, beliefs about science, beliefs
anything
about
to do with people, right?
Yeah, pretty much anything. Beliefs about the self. Literally any belief, there's going to be confirmation bias involved.
Why?
But politics is probably the easiest one to just point out.
Yeah. Why do you think it is that people are prone to confirmation bias?
It's so hard to avoid, isn't it? I mean, so the way I can
dig
explain
it down. Let's dig it deeper. Bias. Why do people seek out confirmation bias?
I believe that I did a little research prior to us actually going live, and what I kind of fell on was confirmation bias in a nutshell is your consciousness kind of battling with your unconsciousness. So pretty much your unconsciousness is your body trying to survive. It's in its survival state. And your consciousness is your ability to logically process things. And those two things clashing together kind of mesh well as far as colliding and becoming confirmation bias.
There's probably an emotional attachment, I would imagine, in this
Absolutely.
space, value attachment even. If I am somebody who has been told one thing and I believe it so much to be true my whole life growing up, it can really shake somebody's identity and value system when they find out that may not be true. And so there's sometimes it's a method of protection for ourselves that we use, and we want people to agree, or we want our idea to work so badly that we're only going to seek out people who agree with us and not seek out the other side that may put a wrench in our game essentially. Any thoughts in that space?
Yeah, there's a theory apparently that states the reason that we have confirmation bias is it was evolved through our ability to reason as a way to further our social agendas, justify our actions, and defend the groups we belong to. And the reason for that is because groups that work well together obviously are going to trump, and not to make this a versus battle between anything, but
did you just say Trump?
Was that a choice of words? That was an interesting choice of words there.
Groups that work well together usually trounce groups that are selfish and don't work well together. So that would be the reason.
Said it again.
My name's Donald Trounce.
Trounce.
I'll trounce anyone.
Trounce,
I'm the
okay.
biggest trouncer. Yeah, I think Jerome's right on the money with that. Human beings, if we're looking at it from an evolutionary standpoint, are not made to believe true things. We're not hardwired to find the truth. We are hardwired to believe things that will benefit us benefit us socially and in a sort of like egotistical way.
It's more than ego. Even it's an evolutionary construct, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to be able to go along with the status quo. We have to be able to exist within society and within a social constructs, and in order to do so, we a lot of times have to go with the flow. Hence the group think and the concept of group think.
I don't even know if confirmation bias works for people who don't go with the flow either.
Yeah, of course.
For whatever belief they have, even if it's not on the surface beneficial or helpful. Like, let's say I've got a belief that like nobody loves me. I just have a belief that nobody loves me, nobody wants
true,
me.
Anthony.
Blah, 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 blah. Even though that belief doesn't seem like it helps me, there is a benefit to it. It's serving a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so to bring it to coaching, you'll get a lot of clients who will like have these beliefs about themselves that don't seem like they're helpful at all. But as a coach, you ask, well, how does this serve you?
And that's scary though sometimes for a client, because having to face that reality that I have been holding on to this truth, this side, my side of things, my side of the story for so long, the idea of considering another side can be very frightening, can be, again, rattle us a bit. It means also that perhaps we are wrong, which that can be a tough thing for people to admit. It can be. It really can be. Because we are, again, we want to be right? We want to, I mean, it's humiliating when we're wrong.
Well, isn't it so much easier to just be right all the time, right? I mean,
I learned though it's easier to just be like, I'm wrong, man. I'm so wrong.
I think when you're considering your unconscious mind, and just proceeding through whatever you're doing in life, to be able to just be right unconsciously all the time makes life so much easier. But yes, when you're conscious about something and you're thinking about something logically, then saying you're wrong sometimes can benefit you, I think, in many ways more than you probably initially would think.
What's funny is, as a leader, somebody who's been in charge of other folk a few times in my life, I learned that the leaders I respect were the ones that could admit fault, the ones that were able to go, okay, yeah, no, I don't know everything. I screwed up here. The ones who have the bravado and pretend like they do everything right and know everything, I have no respect for. So
isn't that your confirmation bias?
My confirmation bias, exactly.
You respect leaders who are open and
let's actually define confirmation bias for people, shall we?
Yes.
Give these psychological definition of what that may be. We've discussed biases before, but confirmation bias, as defined, confirmation bias is a type of cognitive bias that involves favoring information that confirms your previously existing beliefs or biases. For example, imagine a person holds a belief that that left-handed people are more creative than right-handed people. Whenever this person encounters encounters a person that is both left-handed and creative, they place greater importance on the evidence that supports what they already believe. And they might even seek proof to further back up their claims and support that idea. Sorry, guys, my mic fell for no reason. So that's where it sort of gets insidious, though, isn't it? When it's one thing if we're cruising around with our confirmation biasing about, right? But when we start to seek out what I call co-signing our BS, that is when it can get a little shady in the realm of confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Agreed or no? Agree with me?
What do you mean that's where it can be? Because you can try to...
That's when everybody starts to team up. Like it's one of the things in my life I've known people who basically who when there's an argument or a disagreement, there are certain people that will it's not just them, they take up allies, right? And then suddenly you have it's not just you and this person, it's you and several people. And I'm not saying it's always this way, but it can be when you start to seek out confirmation instead of seeking out truth. You're seeking out just the side of what you want. That's when it can, because that's when you're shutting yourself off from information. Like you're deliberate and you're seeking people to co-sign your BS rather than looking at the breadth and width of the picture and seeing all sides and both sides. And that's why this plays into coaching so well,
What instead you should seek out is people who hold opposing beliefs and then try to
Yes.
honestly evaluate what they're saying.
And honestly, evaluate means going in without an emotional attachment, like which can be very hard for us to do. How does this apply to coaching?
Well, confirmation bias should probably be detached from coaching as a coach. If you have,
before you go on, how might coaches bring confirmation bias into coaching?
So for example, in a session, your client presents a problem to you and you say, well, to them, it's a problem. And you say something along the lines of, that's not a problem, or, that doesn't seem like a problem to me. That's dangerous, because in the seat of your client, it is a problem that they truly believe is a problem for them. And they won't, be able to really you're not going to be able to help them get past that problem for them if you believe it isn't a problem at all. You'll probably dance around it, even if you don't outright say that it is a problem or it isn't a problem.
Also, I want to, if anybody,
I was just going to say, you're probably more than likely to kind of bounce around that and avoid that conversation rather than deal with it directly, like your client is typically kind of asking you to do.
You're feeding them the answer at that point. I mean, you're telling them it's not an issue. It's not, but whether or not you think it's an issue, it doesn't matter. If they think it's an issue, it's an issue, right?
Yeah.
Anthony, are you awake?
Yeah, I'm just trying to,
I think it froze with your eyes shut for a moment.
Sorry.
Anybody who's watching too, please let us know. How might a coach, or how might you bring confirmation bias to what it is that you do every day or in a session with a client? I can think of a couple of ways. Anthony, do you have anything?
As far as coaches go, maybe this wouldn't really have to do with, I would say, in the coaching session with the client, but maybe as a profession, coaches, like when you specialize in your field and niches, I see a lot of times, and we've talked about this concept with like the woo portion, like we did a few episodes ago, where you'll claim something about reality. I'm trying to find nice ways to put this.
There's some judgment here. I'm feeling the judgment coming out of it.
I'm trying my best just not to give specific examples. Let's just say
that right there. That's a subconscious cough. That is.
No, I inhaled my saliva. Gosh, what is one that I cannot inflame any of our audience?
While you're thinking about that, another way I can think of a coach bringing confirmation bias is similar to Jerome's, but is if we have a certain specialty and we have done things a specific way and we've gone about our life and we've done our road, and somebody comes in and they have a similar problem that we've once had, we may have a confirmation bias based on our experience. So I tried that and it didn't work for me, so it's not going to work for this person. And we bring that to the table. And so we may even subconsciously guide our client towards ways that we think will work better, or in our experience have worked better, or away from things that did not work for us. And it could be dangerous for our client or unfair to our client, because what we're doing is using our experience when it's a totally different situation for the client, right? So I think that could be another way in which confirmation bias, coaches should stay aware of that. Especially, it's kind of almost dangerous to coach within your specialty, even though it's very helpful, but you're probably more inclined to fall into the safety net of confirmation bias than not, if you're in a space where you are sort of clueless. So would be my assumption. Confirmation bias me, please.
I'll use my own bias, and me and Brooke have gotten into a lot of arguments about this one, about fitness and health and how to lose weight. I am biased. I'll say that, and I think it's for good reason, but I will say I am biased.
You are biased, yes.
Towards the idea that about calories in, calories out.
And I am so opposed to calorie counting.
I'll just say, if you intake less calories than you expend in your day, then you will lose weight. That's just the very simple premise I have.
I'm not arguing against that when I argue.
But
you with this
hold
either.
on. We're gonna get into this argument that's like irrelevant to my actual. I'm just saying that's my bias. If I was a fitness coach and I coach people on fitness goals that they may have, I might not expressly say that belief I have about calories in, calories out, but that deductive reasoning that I have, because I have this premise about how the world works as far as losing weight goes, I have this bias. Even if I don't bring it into the session
You won't even
explicitly,
read articles I send over.
don't distract from the point. Even if I don't
That's
bring
proof
that
of
into the
confirmation
session,
bias.
it's still going to inform almost everything I do in coaching, because that's how I sort of build my worldview off of. So that's one version of confirmation bias. And then I might try to guide my client towards doing goals or doing things
and avoid any kind of information that might not agree with you and your stance. You might just even subconsciously just ignore it and breeze past it, even though
I'm talking purely unconscious, just choices. I try to be the best coach I can, but you might be trying to influence your clients to believe worldviews that don't agree with yours.
So that's a big scary thing when we talk about this. And it comes up a lot whenever we bring up biases, is that so much of our bias and decision making is made subconsciously. It's made without even our conscious awareness. So how do we as coaches and we as human beings be non-biased?
For coaches, you're not supposed to give your opinions on things or give a take on a point of view. Like if a client is like going between, oh, should I do A or should I do B? What do you think? You're not there to say what you think. You're here to try to facilitate a coaching session and ask them, well, what do you think is more important? What would you like to work on? What does this mean to you? To even consider these sort of questions.
I have another question too, but let's stay in this space before I jump off to it, because that's what my brain does. So carry on.
I would say that this is probably why, as a coach, I think it's important to get certified, because you want to kind of stay away from that subconscious behavior that you might utilize in a coaching session. You want to align with that consciousness that you do have with the training that you would get through certification. Again, using what you know works as a coach and staying away from things that could be potentially harmful, like suggesting, like not asking your client what they want to work on. These are things that might come up subconsciously just because that's what comes up in conversation in the real world when we have with people, when they're coming to us for maybe typically answers. But as a life coach, you want to, again, align with that consciousness that you do have and that understanding of what it is and isn't being a life coach. To kind of stay away and avoid, being in that subconscious space of potentially giving harmful responses.
I'm going to say all of this, everything I say throughout this live is said predicated on the fact that I did no research before doing this live, so I don't have statistics or anything to spout off at the moment. But I would assume that every even the best coaches, the best of the best of the best, or the highest, are still struggling with a degree of bias and a degree of confirmation bias, because I think maybe even more, again, I think more successful you are, the more married to the way you got to your success you're going to be. So you're going to think that your way is better than everybody else's because your way is working. And that could be a big trap so maybe failure is what you want.
That'd be a good niche to be in, a failure coach. Like I coach my clients to just failure.
You want to fail? Let's do this.
I would say small instances of failure really benefit. So, I mean, as long as you're not, it's not detrimental and your life is ruined afterwards, we all fail a little bit. It's responding to those failures that are important.
So moving into another, we've talked about coaches and their confirmation bias. what happens? Well, let's just start with this. How might a client struggle with confirmation bias?
I would say they're sort of seeking you out for information to confirm their beliefs. So they might go into sort of an exploration phase of coaching, and they're talking about how what's a good example? They never get anything done. They just have a huge to-do list and they never get anything done, and they're always procrastinating. And they're always telling you stories about how they've procrastinated or how they put things off. That right there, that's the recalling of information that confirms their premise. I'm a procrastinator and I'm lazy.
Yeah.
That's their confirmation bias working. As a coach, what you would do is ask them, okay, you told me all of this. Are there times where that's not the case?
Well,
Are
yes.
there times where you haven't procrastinated and you have followed through with something?
Well, it's very much the stories we tell ourselves. So
Yeah.
if I tell myself that it is this way and it's always been this way, I'm not looking for any other way for it to be. So I am falling victim to confirmation bias. So you can create your own. I mean, confirmation bias works both ways for you. It can work for you and it can work against you. You can create it. You can suffer from it. You can. It's multifaceted.
It's not even like you're doing it consciously as well, because like you could earnestly try to recall times, for example, I wasn't a lazy procrastinator, but it will just come up a blank, even though in reality that's not the case. There would be plenty of times where there's evidence contrary, but your brain literally won't let you remember that stuff because of confirmation bias.
Jerome, before you say anything, do you have any internal thing that you tell yourself and believe to be true?
Yes. Not
Good
to
or
get
bad.
too way out there, but I genuinely 100%, whether you agree with me or not, believe in karma. That is essentially my religion. And I know sometimes it doesn't make sense to other people, but based on my experiences in life, that is my confirmed bias, is that karma, genuinely energy, all of that, that is something that is applicable to everyone. I'm not going to try and push it on
Can
everybody.
you think of a way that this belief that you have, how it serves you and maybe how it hurts you?
How it serves me? Okay, so definitely serves me in the aspect of being, I think, putting my best foot forward when it comes to dealing with anyone or anything in life, because it always, in my mind, is going to come back to me. How it could potentially harm me is maybe there are instances where, like this weekend, I was at the gas station and somebody was asking for $5. I pulled out a 20 and I looked at him and he said, "Oh, come on, that'll help a lot." And I'm like, karma. And I gave it to him instead. But I knew he didn't need that much. But I was, I said to myself, it'll come back to me. And I was okay with it at that point. But who knows? That could have been $20. That could have gotten me that much further. And maybe, I don't know, Christmas is coming up. That could have been $20 towards Christmas.
Is there any other way that you might think it could hurt you?
No, this is a hard question. Confirmation biases are hard to kind of step out of. It's going to be really difficult for me to think of a way that it harms me, because, again, this is something that I kind of embody, and this is my confirmation bias.
How much does a coach want to tackle? Because when it's tied to values, right, we get into a dangerous space. We don't want to. I mean, how far do we go with challenging confirmation bias as a coach? Or asking around? There's no right answer here.
You probably wouldn't say, like, you probably wouldn't frame it in that sort of way, as in, this is a problem we're going to work on. But if a confirmation bias does come up and you sort of internally note, oh, this might be a bias here, I wouldn't say you have to ask permission. You can just be curious and ask sort of, what do they mean by this? When is this always true? When is this not true?
So Anthony, is there something you believe to be true about yourself?
I wanted to talk more about Jerome because I think that'd
I
be
knew that was
interesting.
Oh, that was enough. I'm just kidding.
coming.
Um,
Calories. We can talk about calories.
yeah, we
I,
can
by
talk
the way,
about
agree
it.
with you, Anthony, on that stance. I absolutely agree with you. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Because when we're asking Jerome, I
Hi,
think we're
Miguel.
asking
Hi, Miguel.
more about Jerome's actions when it's harmful, when it's hurtful, but like it was kind of neutral though.
Yeah, it was. Uh-huh.
Like I wouldn't know if there would be any really good reason to just ask Jerome about that out of the blue in like a real
Well,
coaching
why asking him about karma? Well, the one thing I was thinking, possibility for negative in this space, maybe it prevents him
Mhm.
from doing things sometimes that he might perceive as selfish, or he might perceive as it might, but come back to bite him in the butt or something like that, you know. But perhaps that could also be another case of confirmation bias, where it's not truly a selfish act, or it's not truly something that would result in any negative happening, but he avoids because of the fear of karma.
So here's an interesting question then that I honestly don't know like how to approach from the standpoint of a coach.
Mhm.
When is it okay to challenge a client's belief if it's like a deeply held like belief?
I
So
would say
like if
never challenge.
yeah,
well,
We
not
don't.
I mean what I mean to say is like examine if it's true or not. So if it's a bias, like my calorie example,
Okay.
you would ask, is this always true? Is this always the case?
It's saying we have no sound. Did we have no sound? Can you hear us, Miguel? Miguel can hear us.
yeah.
Okay.
It might be the
Anthony, to
anon-
respond, I think whenever that's presented as a block, that's
Mhm.
when you are kind of given that green flag to open it up to exploration. If it's a,
Well, it's maybe not even when it's presented as a block. Well, yeah, well, yes, absolutely. When it's presented as a block and
Mhm.
it's blocking a way that they want to go, a goal that they have,
Mhm.
something you set in a session, and this is
Mhm.
standing in the way of that. I think
Okay.
also when a client is asking you to,
yep,
when a
Mhm.
client asks for to explore that space, asks to go there, and you'll know when the client is ready. They're going to
Mhm.
lead you down there pretty easily. You're not going to end up there by accident. And I think the key is, though, to be very conscientious, because the one thing we do hold insanely close to ourselves and can and incite us is our value system. And
Mhm.
if we're challenging a core value, or a core belief that is based on a core value, it can be a very sort of traumatic kind of
Yeah,
thing. So
you don't want to just
heed.
confront people like that.
Uh-huh, exactly.
But
And so that's why it's critical to have the client's permission to
yeah,
have that door opened.
it
Um,
does seem difficult for a coach though if it seems that the deeply held intrinsic belief is just rooted in confirmation bias.
It could be very frustrating. It could be
Yeah.
very, very frustrating. And people do this so much to the nth degree, especially if it's a big good example of this is in business. If
Mhm.
I'm somebody who has been building a business, right, and I'm building a business on a product that I believe to be, it's like becomes like my baby, becomes like my kid. This is another place for a great place for confirmation bias, right? And it becomes so close to me, ingrained in me, that what happens is I have blocks that I create to protect it, because I don't want my idea. I'm so married to it to not be a success. But by virtue of doing that, you're essentially making sure that your idea is not a success, because what you need is feedback and growth and adaptability to create a business that
Mhm.
changes and that is viable and successful. But so many business owners, because they hold it so closely, it's so precious to them, it's really very difficult for them to accept criticism, to explore sort of where it's not working. And that can be a very kind of hard thing for businesses. I've learned this in my business, what I do. There's a lot of clients I handle reviews. I don't, because why? Because it's a personal attack, even though it's not about them and it's their business. It's a personal attack on them as far as they're concerned. And so it can be a very, very kind of frustrating space for people.
So then it really depends on what the client is working on then.
Yes, and
If
that's
they
really the
want
key.
to work on that limiting belief is what I guess in the coach jargon, but it could be a confirmation bias, then
You
explore
have to
it.
be careful
Ask
here too,
questions.
because we could be falling into therapy realm in a lot of this as well. If it's that internal dialogue of I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm a failure, I'm
Mhm.
stuck. That's being stuck in this
In the past.
past headspace.
Mhm.
So be it's something to be very aware of with your client and make sure that they're wanting to move through those, wanting to move past them. I mean, mind you, there's the subconscious level where if it's not affecting it and it's not, you know what I mean, leave it alone to some degree. But we want to always make sure that we're moving forward. And if they're really stuck in that, it could be a therapy space as well.
Mhm.
Um, Here's a quick question: how might a coach use confirmation bias to their benefit?
You just took the words out of my mouth, but yes. Yeah, I know we explained it a little bit as how it can work for you in the real world, as a kind of a
Marketing.
technique for, well, I was thinking more of a technique for survival.
Mhm.
That kind of, when you're in a situation where your unconsciousness can kind of present itself as a, something to protect you with, that makes sense. But for a coach, that could be a little bit more difficult in answering as far as how it can work for you. I'm going to turn it back over to you guys because I do not have an answer right off the top of my
I
head.
was gonna say marketing. This is
Marketing, absolutely.
the
Yeah,
first like to be really underhanded, you can use
yeah,
marketing to sort of
No,
almost confirm those pain points for
it doesn't
people.
have to be underhanded though. I mean, it all, because
Yeah.
one way confirmation bias is used is if I have a successful business, automatically the followers of that business are going to trust me more and
No,
going
that's a good
to
point.
assume what I am offering is a viable product
yeah.
because I've already been successful here. Their confirmation bias of me will then make them more inclined to believe I'm also going to be successful over here. So
What you're saying is
testimonials, confirmation bias,
we have
right?
to expand the CLCI brand and just sell just random stuff.
We could, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but that is an example of confirmation bias. Everybody who's taken level 1, they are gonna, and they're inclined to take level 2. That is confirm. They're like, this one was great. This one's got to be
Yeah.
great too.
There's a theory
This conversation necessarily is probably like going to work against us as far as our sales go, but it's not necessarily true that level 2 will be just as good as level 1.
Hey, why would you say that?
Not, I'm not saying necessarily and like
I think
100%
it's
true
better.
doesn't mean that's true. It is better or
Yeah.
just as good and better than level 1 for different reasons, but that doesn't mean it's true
So
because level 1 was good.
there's a odd phenomenon that happens in people, and this can be kind of a brutal topic, but we as human beings seek explanation patterns and sort of like we want things to always be going the way that we expect, and we're control freaks, right? So we're all of us, I want to know that if I go A plus B will always equal C, and I want this has to be true, and when it's not I get very upset. But what's really hard for people to accept is that there are a lot of random accident things that happen in the world, or well, if you don't believe in accidents, but they're random. Again, yes, we're not tackling beliefs here, but things that happen
Ready to
that
tackle it.
we may have no control or power over, or seem like freak accidents or what have you, and they just happen. But we often want to apply, if it's bad, blame to something or somebody when maybe there's not somebody to blame. And we will seek confirmation bias to do so. We will absolutely do that. And the truth is, maybe sometimes there isn't somebody to blame, and there isn't a good reason we can see or we're aware of, and that makes it so much harder for us as people to process those things when there's no. And that's really a big part of that spirituality. When spirituality comes in, is that concept of letting go, letting it go to, and that's helps us as people deal with what we have no power or control over. And that is a huge example of confirmation bias, and us needing to put order to everything, and categorize, is just that. But not always are these things true. and not always do things, as we know, be the gray, be an outlier. And in fact, it's when confirmation bias doesn't happen that the greatest growth and change happens, I would say, right? When we break those biases.
Yeah.
So again, how can we, let's say we have a client in our thing and we're talking to them, we're asking about well, this is kind of a loaded question, so I'm not going to ask that.
Ask it anyways. Now that we know it's loaded,
but so one of the things we can do if we want to bring it is to be open-minded to research, right? Open-minded. So how do we get our clients to open their minds up? Again, we the always, really always, the never, really never. Is there any other ways that perhaps you guys can think of doing that?
I
And
would
also
say
subconscious mind control.
I would say positioning that thought process of your client in a way that works for them. So, for example, when they do say that this always happens this way when I do it, asking them, when has that not been the case? When has it not always, like they mentioned, when has it always not been that, or when has it not? Yes. When it has not been always that case where there was an instance, for example, where that did work for you, where that didn't actually, go the way that you say it always has.
I think, well, okay, so what if I'm a client and I'm like, okay, I want to do, I'm going to try to find a real life example so it's not total BS.
Also, if the viewers have real life examples as well,
please join them. Please give us real life. Please. So let's say what is something I want to do? I want to I want to cook dinner. Okay, so there are typically what I do is I cook dinner like this, but I could also cook dinner like this. Typically I go in the kitchen and I go in, but I want some extra time. I could just do Instacart and but if I'm a client and I see myself leaning towards the way, but I always do it this way. But this is how I always do it. This is what, I'm most comfortable doing it this way. And would it be okay for a coach to say, well, why don't you try something different? Because if it's a client that's always doing the one thing, is that pushing our client in a different direction?
So what in this case for you, what is the always? I always do this, but I want to do this instead. Yeah. What is this in this example?
I don't always do anything the same way over and over again. I'm the most inconsistent human being on the planet. So this is terrible.
Let's just use a pretend example then. Do you always order the Instacart or are you always making the food?
Never.
I
responded with never.
Choose one for the sake of the example.
Get a real life example here. Let me think of something I always do. I do on repeat over and over again, which is very few things. Okay, so I've got it. Lately I have been. I enjoy working out. Lately though I've been rowing. Like I've been primarily doing like rowing, but I haven't been making enough time to do like the other things. But I really like rowing, so I don't want to give up the rowing part. I really like it. I've got a thing that I do, and I've got a method. I don't know if I'm gonna have time to get to the other stuff too, though. Right? I always do that, and I think that I don't want to stop doing it that way. But I like mixing the other stuff.
You should live on a lake and just get a boat. Just row everywhere. Maybe a good question would be, Brooke, how much time do you need to devote to rowing versus how much time do you want to devote to rowing?
I don't even care about time. This isn't about time.
This is about time. You just said
energy is about physical energy, and like me, I reach a point where I'm like, when I'm done, I'm like, oh my god, I can't imagine doing anything else. Like, yeah.
That's what you meant. I should have been a better coach and just asked more clarifying questions and then just assume.
I would say, what's the importance of doing anything outside of rowing to you?
I just feel like it will work out my other muscles better. Sometimes I think that I want to make sure, I'm not going to say because this is going to sound really vain. I'm going to sound really, really vain and kind of ridiculous. So I'm not going to say that part. But No, I just like to work out certain parts of my body and make sure that they are as I like them to be. And I don't know that rowing works out those parts of my body as well as I might
It doesn't. I think I already know what you're getting at. It doesn't work out that part of your body. So you have what you want, a goal that you want to do. You want to work out other parts of your body.
Yes, but I
Would you
also
like-
like to watch rowing. When I row, I learn things. I put like documentaries on, and like I really like that part about rowing. I guess I could do both, but we could do that too.
Yes,
When
you could, or can you do both?
I could do that too when I lift and do other things as well. So do squats, etc. Now the confirmation bias in this is what exactly? I don't think there is any.
I think, okay, the confirmation bias, here's an example, would be, well, I did read this one article that says it does work. It's like a full body workout. It does do a full body workout.
Yeah,
That would be a form of
that's the word on
confirmation
the street. That's what I'm told. Yeah.
word on the street. So so that's kind of difficult because as a coach, let's say a fitness coach, I think I know better, and I
Mhm.
want to say no, you're wrong.
Uh-huh.
But
You can't do
you
that.
don't say that as a coach, though.
Nope.
You say so maybe I would ask then.
I think this is where
Well,
you
like
can
my I want to do everything and like, well, go do some research. Like part of me wants to like
Yeah. I maybe ask, how would you get
Yeah.
results? How would you be able to know the results? How would you be able to see progress being made if
Well,
it
and
is a full body workout?
that's why it's so important with our clients to dig deeper, because ultimately it's not your process may not be their process, right? So my inclination is to tell them to go do research and figure out, whatever. Your inclination is what results are you seeing and how's that, everybody's going to have a different instinct in this space, and that's why that being curious and it might be a space where you ask deeper about why rowing is important, why lifting is important, how does one benefit you versus the other, how, and you can sort of start to explore that space. Is there a way to combine the two? Is there
I think,
or what is it that you're getting from this that you aren't getting from the other? Because ultimately there's a series of questions we've gone over a few times, and that's that when we're digging deeper towards the why with people, towards the emotional relevance, we ask, what does that give you, right? You guys know this, like, so if I have X, Y, and Z, what does that give me? Well then and we keep going until we reach a point of exhausted, where it's like, what does that get you? What does that give you? What does that get you? And finally you'll reach a point where you hit that end. With confirmation bias, you can do the same thing because it's tied to an emotional belief. Like the bias is tied to some kind of emotional belief. So you can go down the same path. What does believing that get you? What does that give you? What does that get? And you can keep going with people, and it might be a good way to not only learn more, but also to get to the root of that bias and why it exists to start with. So if I were to ask Jerome, what does believing in karma get you?
Yeah, Jerome.
Helps me sleep at night because I'm confirming my biases.
What is getting you to sleep at night give you?
It helps me wake up happier, and it gives me structure as well, I would say. Believing in karma gives me a little bit of structure that I can kind of align myself with and proceed in life with, which is nice to have. It's always nice to lean on something, kind of just as it would be should I, believe in a different religion, which again, karma is essentially my religion.
So what is having structure and what is having that belief system give you?
Makes decisions easier. I'm not sitting around trying to decide what to do next. I already have a basic system set in place where I can kind of, just based on what I'm experiencing, pull answers from based on that system.
And then when you have a system in place and decisions are easier, what does that give you?
It gives me the ability to just do life, I think, easier. Life's easier when making decisions are easier. If you're always sitting around trying to decide what to do next, it can not only slow down life itself because you're always trying to figure out what that next step is, But it can make life a bit grueling. You don't, it really can be difficult if you don't know, and suck really if you don't know what to do next. It can really be bad to just I feel like your mental.
So that's what happens when you don't have it, when you don't have that in place.
Hmm.
I hear you saying it makes you feel like life becomes grueling, difficult. So when you have it in place, how do you feel?
Fulfilled again. Life becomes maybe not necessarily fulfilled, but when it's in place, it definitely, I've got just like, when you're at the bowling alley, you've got rails that you can stay in between. And it just, again, really, to simply explain it, it's just easier. It's just a lot easier to kind of have this structure that you can kind of lean on whenever things maybe get somewhat complicated as far as decision making is concerned. It gives me an easy pool to pull from when it comes to making decisions. And
So what happens when things are difficult?
what happens when things are difficult? Life becomes grueling. Then it becomes slower, and you have to make difficult decisions, which sucks sometimes. And I don't think anyone likes to be presented with difficult decisions to make on a regular basis.
Have you had difficult decisions to make in the past?
Yes, absolutely. Haven't we all? Yes, yes.
And tell me more about how you made it through those.
Really, with again this implemented system that I have, it helps me to understand that my decision is based on a belief that I have, that I truly, throughout the process of my life, have confirmed to be true personally. It really helps to understand that I made decisions based off of that, rather than just randomly pulled some answers and hope that they worked. Because at the end of the day, I believe that that system that's in place for me is something that is tried and true and works. And at the end of the day, again, helps me sleep at night, makes me feel a little bit better about myself.
I have one more question in this space. What would happen if that system didn't exist?
Oh my God. um, I'd probably be searching for another system then. I would go out and look for something else that works for me. Um, but in that instance of non existence, of having no system at all, I have no idea. That's scary. That's scary to think of. There's just, I guess I would just kind of, I do things based off of what, my experiences kind of suggest that I do, what other people have done, what has, I guess, potentially worked in the past, but I'm not sure has or not. What I have done previous to whatever instance I'm in at that moment. Probably more so leaning on other people's decisions and thinking about the things that they've done in the past in that scenario, just because I have no idea what I would do personally.
In this imaginary realm where the system doesn't exist,
Hmm.
how would your decisions change?
They would slow down a lot. I think I do a lot more thinking, um, a lot more exploration in determining what my next step or answer is, which you know, kind of in retrospect sounds nice sometimes, but sometimes you don't have the time to do that. Sometimes you don't have all the time in the world to sit back and decide, very open mindedly what the next step is, or what the, I don't even want to say right answer is, but the next answer is for you to go ahead and move with.
And do you, when you are making decisions based on the system of karma, do you know the outcomes?
As far as what, when you say
Whatever
outcomes?
it is that you're deciding, of what that decision's outcomes will be.
Yeah, for me, I understand that it helps me sleep at night. Usually the responses are based in karma. They're typically ones that give off and provide good energy, goodwill, good intent, and stay away from any selfish intent, which isn't always bad. I understand that, But I'm in the headspace of really just interacting with other people as far as karma is concerned, that always helps me at the end of the night. Just knowing that I was as good as I could be to the people around me.
I have a total yes or no question that would not be good coaching question at this point. So, which because I think I could explore in this space with you for a while, and because I had thought processes but we're running out of time, of asking about, is thinking through, you're taking a while to think through your decisions a bad thing, or is it, or what does that result in?
Yeah.
And there also was an inclination in me to lead, and I was trying my best not to. But in that, though, and just exploring that space a little bit, how do you feel about karma now?
Again, still believe it. I have a confirmed bias that's the way to live. But I will say I'm absolutely open to not sometimes subscribing to it, if there's a time to do so, because kind of like we mentioned earlier, and not to step out of this coaching session, but we did mention that, really where the work gets done is when you do have time to sit and kind of consider the other options, the alternatives, and that's where the growth comes for you as a person.
Well, I think we in now, this is observation and it's totally not coaching hat off all the way.
Mhm.
With the karma is serving a purpose for you. It absolutely is. And it's making your life easier and everything along those lines. You might find some where I could see it limiting, I guess you could say, is that you're taking responsibility and putting it outside of yourself, right? Whereas you might discover some serious empowerment when you say, okay, I don't, or when you could say, I don't know what the outcome will be, good or bad. I'm doing this because I'm doing this and I'm choosing to, and not for the sake of that. But that doesn't, not to say that karma is wrong or bad. I think it's a beautiful and amazing thing. And I have similar feelings about, you put good out there, you get good back. And I know that I want to put my head on the pillow and feel like a good human being every night. And that I didn't hurt anybody along the way. That's what's important to me. But we can unintentionally hurt people. So
Yes.
But you could see, though, in that space we were exploring, and I actually saw him becoming a little more flexible too. I don't know if you guys felt that way, or if you saw that, Anthony, but I saw some there was him sort of ease into, like, wait, well, I didn't really think of it that way before for a moment. And that's all with just exploring what does that give you? How does that make you feel? What does that do for you?
And notice, the viewers, we're not coaching to correct a bias, or try to get to a certain truth value about that person's belief. Like, we're not trying to interrogate Jerome and say, okay, is karma true? Yes or no? How could you prove that it's true? Yes or no? We're not doing any of that stuff, because Jerome might be right.
We're not challenging the belief. We're asking.
We're not challenging the belief. Jerome could 100% be true about his beliefs in karma, and they might align with reality. But we're not trying to figure that out as coaches. What we're trying to do is to see if his beliefs align with his goals, and if they're useful to him in some sort of way where Jerome feels that it's productive.
And also, it's yes, and seeing also how attaching that emotional relevance to it as well is important. Him knowing that karma is important to him, and knowing why, and knowing what it does for him and how it serves him, could help him in proceeding in goal setting, etc. Yeah.
I would say that's an empowering space to be in, is to kind of sometimes just confirm what you believe in. That's not a normal conversation.
Helpful.
Yeah, that's not a normal conversation. Why do you believe in karma? But to sit here in a session and kind of reflect as to why that is important to you, you can walk away from the session feeling empowering.
I never asked why do you believe. I asked, what does it give you? Yeah. Mhm.
Now, if Jerome had a sort of issue where he had, I have this belief, or I have this belief in karma, but I also have this goal, and they seem to be opposed to each other. What do I do?
Like if
That's where
Jerome was
that's where you can get really interesting in the coaching space,
he
and a
wanted
lot
to
of
go
fun
with
as
karma,
well.
there could be some conflict there.
Yeah,
um,
Yeah.
what do I do?
yeah. Because a lot of times you'll get clients who have their beliefs about something or about the world, and they have an outcome or a goal that is in conflict with that.
So, for
And
example, I can
they-
probably bring one up.
Yeah.
Would be so I have a friend. He has no transport to the airport. He's been looking for days, can't make it. But also, I have this really big meeting that's like 20 minutes after. I can do it, but it's going to be really tight for me. It's going to be a crunch. And karma says go do it. Go ahead and give him, drop him off, and I bet
Yeah,
you
karma
you'll
says
kill it in that meeting. Whatever that meeting has coming for you is going to be great. It's going to be awesome. But realistically, you should probably, just as far as that crunch is concerned, maybe say, "Hey, I'm sorry, this sucks, but I'm not gonna be able to do it. I've got
Can
a
I
big
can
meeting."
I sort of up the stakes as well?
Oh,
What if we have a client who had that same situation happen in the past, and they were like, I did what was karmic of me, and I gave that person a ride, and I knew in that moment I was going to do well in the meeting, and they were fired in the meeting because they were late, and they got divorced because they were fired.
Or,
Their
or
dog
no,
died.
you could go the other way, or it went really well. So now I feel like anytime somebody asks me for something, I have to say yes for my success to happen. Like
Mhm.
for me to be successful, I have to say yes. Like I have to do. I know I have to, otherwise my meeting's gonna be horrible.
mm,
Yeah.
And they don't know that for sure, And in truth, it's two unrelated things. I think even in the eyes of karma, they might be unrelated. Because one is about driving somebody to the airport, and
yeah.
one is about you getting to your meeting on time. Which, if you don't, that could be bad as well, and be rude, and you're wasting other people's time. So there's
That's a good point. The karma
Yeah.
would say you should honor other people's expectations and time. So then you're balancing, okay, what's more important?
so really then you ask, well, what is that? That's when you have to do that deeper dig. Well, what do you want to do? What is going to serve you better in your process? What is more important to you? Kind of thing. And attaching that emotional relevance, and then helping the client realize that whatever choice they make is okay for them to make, and that it's not there's no black or white way to go about it, right? Because I think karma would be okay with both situations.
This is also probably why finding a good coach in your niche is probably very important, because a spiritual coach who's familiar with karma would probably know the best questions to ask.
Maybe though, maybe not though. They might be all biased.
Okay. Throw it. Let's just throw everything out. I don't know anything anymore.
No, but I just mean in the sense that
Yeah.
like if I'm going to explore more, I'm going to ask Jerome, well, why would this be bad karmically? Why would this be bad karmically? Why would this be good karmically? Why would this be good? And then it's all about exploring more and not having the answers in that space. Great example though, by the way. We should have had that 30 minutes ago. Jerome, where were you?
I hadn't been coached yet. Sorry.
I think we're out of time.
I think that's it.
So confirmation bias, sum it up, it is when you are seeking confirmation of whatever it is you believe, and it can often happen subconsciously. And also you can solicit, enroll, and bring others into your confirmation bias, or find people like you. Birds of a feather flock together is evidence of confirmation bias right there. When you see a whole bunch of rebellious punk kids hanging out in a group, none of them are being rebellious. They're just being a bunch of confirmation biasers all hanging out together. So that is a great example of confirmation bias. And break your biases. Try something else. Try something different.
Here's my takeaway: coach the individual, don't coach the bias.
Yes.
You're coaching the individual and what do they want in their goals, not the problem or the bias if you think it's a bias.
I love that. I mean, that we never questioned Jerome's belief in karma. What we did was ask what it does for him, why it's important to him, how it's serving him, what is important about it. Never said why is karma a thing? Like, why do you believe in it?
Once the camera turns off, then I'm gonna start harassing Jerome.
Yeah. Jerome, take away.
Confirmation biases are plentiful. They're really hard to, kind of step out of sometimes, because again, it's that unconscious, subconscious in your brain. But I think really to pull away from that, the more you have, the more you practice being a little bit more conscious in, particular scenarios, whatever it may be, the further away you step away from that or you have the ability to at least step away from that confirmation bias. And especially as a coach, that's important. Be conscious in your exploration. Don't let your subconscious take over by, leading with your consciousness, and think about asking the questions that, are based in whatever your client's reality are and not yours.
I'm going to coin a phrase. Be open mindful. Which go with an open mind, but be present and mindful of the situation. So it really is what it is, if you can. No, and it's that awareness, like you said, Jerome, is so key. Is being able to recognize when that you might be doing that. Because we can intend to be a blank slate, but it's not. No es posible. Lo siento. We do bring our experience with us. And so learning to turn that volume down so you can listen to somebody else and their side and their opinion can be one of the hardest things to do. But when it's done, it's beautiful. And that's all.
Yeah.
Goodbye,
everyone. Check us out and do register for our classes, whatever.
Make sure you guys check out Certified Life Coach Institute. We certify coaches in 3 days. We believe that we are awesome, and you can ask anybody else that we are.
We're also biased.
I know, that's why I'm doing this. We are award-winning. Also, if you enjoyed our topic of confirmation bias, or want us to, thank you too, Natasha, or want us to touch on any other topics, if you're a coach or want to be a coach and anything of that nature, just leave it in the comments. We would love to tackle whatever it is you have for us. Thank you. Hi, Cecily. It's good to see you. Thank you guys for watching. You're awesome.
I want to ask you guys to leave down a suggestion for a topic that we have in the future. Please go ahead. If you guys are still here, go ahead and suggest.
Leave a topic. Leave a question. Leave it something. We have ideas, but we want to hear from you.
So we'll see you guys next Tuesday.
At 4 o'clock, next Tuesday at 4 o'clock. Lisa will be back with us. We actually were nominated. Certified Life Coach Institute was nominated for the Champion of Women Award with the Connected Women of Influence, and we will be at the award ceremony tomorrow.
What was Brooke nominated for?
I'm not gloating.
What was Brooke nominated for? Brooke was Woman to Watch Award.
Yes.
Award. We're watching her right now.
Yes, so that's why it's a very literal award.
Business women and all that good stuff. So we're going to be starting on
Thursday, and that's why Lisa isn't here with us. And so we are excited. Thank you, Connected Women of Influence. We're very excited about that. So, and that's all. Thank you guys. Right. Leave topics in the comments. We want to know.
Please do.
Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Once again, this is brought to you by Certified Life Coach Institute. We're an ICF accredited school who certifies our life coaches in 3-day online intensive courses. In addition to other podcast episodes, feel free to check us out every Tuesday at 4 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube or Facebook for our CLCI Lives, where we get together and discuss various topics that are centered around sharpening your skills so you can become a better certified life coach. For more information, feel free to visit us at CertifiedLifeCoachInstitute.com. Until next time, be well.